Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best version of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins, a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth, providing you with valuable insights and actionable tips to thrive. Sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to share their experience and expertise. Whether you're looking to improve your relationships or find greater joy, you're in the right place on your journey to becoming a better you. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome back. What a great episode that we were able to hear from Superman Brock. I got to call you that, Brock. It just resonates with me because oftentimes as men, we want to be Superman. We want to be able to save our families or the world, so to speak. And as men, we're doers and we want to serve. We want to help. And oftentimes I think we feel squashed. And I know last time that we left off in our discussion, you were headed that way to where it was starting to impact you in regard to your family, your marriage, and the thought processes. Did the thought processes just stay there, or did it impact you in such a way that it caused a more of a rift in the marriage? Tell us a little bit more about where did these thoughts go as a man that becomes destructive?
Yeah, so I'll just tell you, it felt like we the first 7 or 8 years, I think we probably got by on still in the honeymoon phase. While there were things building, it was still workable at that point. I think at some time in 2010, 11, decided to start a business. And I think that was the point where I realized I was a drug addict in a sense that most people don't think of drug addicts. I was a work addict. That was my drug, and success was my drug. And so that was not something I was prepared to be able to contain. And so my sole focus was grow, 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 and money, money, money. And I think over the course of, I'd say 2011 to, now, or several years ago, really, I think my sole purpose was if I am financially taking care of my family, if I'm giving them the best of everything, then I'm doing my job. That's my number one job.
Sure.
And I couldn't see anything else. That's all I could see. I skipped out on the other. I honestly didn't have the time and the energy for the real stuff, the connection with my wife, how was your day? How are you feeling? Is everything okay with you? Is there anything I can do for you? In a sense, I've never been a selfish person. I've always been one of the most unselfish people on the planet. But because I felt like I was doing all I was doing for her and for my family, in a sense, I guess I kind of made my selfishness okay. And so looking back in the moment, nothing I ever did was selfish, but everything I did looked like selfishness to everybody else.
Do you think by just working and being a workaholic and these things that the tunnel vision of just being in those thoughts that you're trying to escape the feeling and the emotion that you were feeling that you weren't good enough, pushed you to thrive further? Do you think that was what was happening?
Yeah. So, I've actually heard it said, I think Brene Brown is the one that said it. She's talking about, how as adults the things that happen in our childhood that are the most traumatizing coincidentally end up being the things that make us highly successful in certain areas.
Right.
And so for me, I was chasing, I was trying to shut that voice off. And so I didn't know what that voice was. It just wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop telling me, wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough. Every time I would do something not like my character, every time I would do something wrong, every time I make a bad decision, I fought harder to cover it up because I didn't want to get exposed. I didn't
Right.
want the people closest to me to know that, I had done something wrong, you know, because I really thought like everybody looked at me like I was perfect. Okay. Like this is the guy that everything he touches turns to gold. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't make the wrong decision. And I was basing every decision I made off of that. And so I fought really hard to cover it up. And so what that did is turn my need to cover everything up, honestly, resulted in zero connection with my wife. I mean, zero connection whatsoever. And the harder that got, the more I pulled away because I felt inadequate. I felt I can't even do this right. And so in my mid 30s, that turned into pornography. And so, pornography went on for 6 or 7 years. And, of course, that does nothing but drive an even thicker wedge in between you and the ones you love and completely dilutes what reality is. And so yeah, I just pushed away because I didn't want to feel like someone could have the chance of knowing
Mm-hmm.
the mistakes I made. But the crazy thing is, like, she knew all along. She knew I was drowning,
Right.
and and she even said it on numerous occasions. But of course, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not seeing reality. She knew I was drowning, but yeah,
Well, that was
I just
a
couldn't.
well, it was a sore spot. And who wants to go to a doctor and he pushes on this sore spot? Does that hurt? Well, yeah, it hurts.
Yeah,
And so here she is trying to say, yeah, I see that. But what's fascinating for this situation, Brock, is that for most men, their women are gone
yeah,
because they can't deal with what they feel is the emotional infidelity that's happening. The husband's withdrawing, he's working more. So in her mind, and I can't speak for her, but for some women, it's they also feel inadequate. What's wrong with me?
yeah,
Have I lost my attraction to my husband?
yeah,
And so they spiral. So
yeah,
kind of give an idea of what happened in the marriage, and then I'm assuming well, I know the story that you're still married, but
yeah.
how'd you stay it? How'd you keep it?
Yeah, so honestly, I would say we are two of the most stubborn and committed human beings on the planet. So, um, but I think the biggest thing is that um, that covenant between us and God that we made, like that actually means something to us.
Right.
And so, um, I did for the longest time. I had this vision of like this, Romeo and Juliet love affair crap. Like it was supposed to be perfect all the time. And that's not love.
Right.
That's not what love is. Love is not a feeling. And so at first, love starts with the feeling, but love, like long lasting lifetime love, that's not a feeling. It's a choice, you
Right.
know? And so I think what's kept us together while, obviously we have loads of issues we still work through, everybody does. Um, I think is just more than anything, just the belief that like that means something, that covenant we made, it means something. And so I think most people, what they decide to do when it gets hard is that, oh, it's not supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to feel like this. I don't feel all gushy inside.
Right.
It's not easy. So I'm just going to move on to something else. Well, 100% of the time they find out when they move on to something else, it's just as hard. And so, um, yeah,
Yeah, I hear it all the time. I love him or her. I just don't know if I'm in love. And so that's just that's again, that's based on
yeah,
feeling. And
Yeah.
I think we live in this consumerism society that we just throw away our relationship, walk away when things get hard, thinking that, oh, things get better if I just divorce this spouse. I can get
Yeah.
into another, we trade into like a car, we can trade it in and get something new.
Yeah.
So, what was the turnaround for you in realizing I'm in this deep sand pit sinking? What caused you to kind of turn around and realize that?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll go back a little bit. Over the course of 10 years, I was in the ER in the middle of the night 7 times, I think.
Hmm,
Um, I I would feel like I was having a heart attack or a stroke. Um, and I would be having these just massive anxiety attacks. And I wouldn't let anybody call it anxiety because that doesn't feel masculine enough. That felt too weak. And so um, for me, what happened is my body, I continued to throw the weight of the world on top of it, and my body couldn't handle it anymore. And so my mentality was that if I'm sinking, I've got to swim faster. Well, eventually your body doesn't have anything to give.
right.
And for people like me, your body doesn't give out in the middle of the day because your mind's occupied. You have a goal, a task at hand. It gives out in the middle of the night. And so it was seven times in 10 years. I was middle of the night, thought I was having a stroke, and I'd end up in the ER, and it'd be the same thing. My blood pressure would be like 180 over 140 or something, and just chaos running out.
Right.
And, and then it was almost like within 20 minutes of being at the ER, it was like I was calm. I was okay.
You
You
know
know?
what I hear in that story, Brock, is the what David wrote in the book of Psalms, where he said, "I kept quiet, and my bones just wasted away." And so there's a message behind this that the body does keep score of our
Yeah.
emotion. It has an impact. And so here you are trying to escape from everything, but your body says, no, you're not escaping. You got to
Yeah.
face the impact. So here you are, you're dealing with these health concerns. Now it's compounding everything else. What happens next?
Well, every day I just felt like someone was stepping on my chest.
Hmm.
It wouldn't go away. It really did. It felt like a 300-pound guy was stepping on my chest. Every step I took, it was like someone was stepping on me. And I don't know. The feeling, I tried to fix that feeling with more caffeine. I was tired, more
Right.
caffeine, that'll fix it. Um, less structure. If I just swim faster, I'll be all right. Of course, which leads to terrible eating habits. I tried to fix that feeling with, like I said, pornography. I think the beginning for me was, my daughter. I've always, even through all this, I've always been a good dad. I don't know how, but I've always been a good dad. I've just been a lousy husband. Um, but my daughter, she's 11. She has a softball game, and I've never missed a game. And I'm missed the whole first inning. I show up. My wife says, "Hey, your daughter wants to tell you something." So I walk over there, and she says, "Daddy, I want to get baptized. Will you do it?"
Hmm.
And of course, the thought going through my head was like, "That's the most amazing feeling in the world." But it's also like, I just spent 20 minutes in the parking lot looking at porn, and so that was it. That was the spot for me. Um, that was a spot for me. I, I got in the truck after that game, and I looked in the mirror and I said, "You are not who she thinks you are." And honestly, that was the beginning for me. And then a short while later, there was an opportunity for a video series at our church. It was over pornography, and I signed up for it hesitantly, knowing that I needed it. And they grouped us up into groups of four randomly. There was 40 or 50 men there, And I walked in and I thought, man, these guys don't know what they're in here for. They don't know what this class is. Because I'm looking at men and I'm like, nope, no way, no way, no way. And they group me up and I look over and there's four men in my group. One of them is a guy he's an elderly gentleman and a very prominent man. Like I look at him and for 15 years I've been like, I want to be like this man. Like I wish I could be like him. Like everything about him is godly. And another man was a guy I knew closely. We were in Sunday school class together. He was a former pastor, and I thought, not happening, not happening. And so I'd paid my money. I said, screw this, honestly, Steve. I turned around, I walked out the exit. I said, I'm not doing this. I looked up at God. I said, I'm not doing this. There's no freaking way. And I heard 2 minutes, and I hadn't slowed down my life long enough to ever really hear what God was trying to tell me. And I heard 2 minutes. And I stopped and I thought, man, I didn't hear that. Like we all doubt. I didn't hear that. And I took a couple more steps and I heard 2 minutes again. And it stunned me a little bit. And I thought, I'm going crazy. That's what I thought. I'm going crazy. And I said a cuss word and I said 2 minutes. And I turned around and with all the anger in my gut I could muster up, I walked in that room and I sat down. And that guy who I wish I could be like, even still to this day, he proceeded to tell his story, and it was way worse than I've ever been. and 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 I was freed. Like in that moment, I was like, I just started crying.
Sure.
And ironically, his testimony lasted about 2 minutes. And I looked at him and I said, like, you just freed me. I said, I have looked at you a certain way, thinking you came out of the womb perfect. I've wanted to be you since I met you. And yet you just told me things that I've never gone that far. And I love you. Like I respected you before, but I love you now. Like I love you even more now. And like that was like honestly, that was the beginning for me that you could know something like that about somebody and you could have a genuine connection. And so that was huge for me.
When, as people of faith, we hear in James where it talks about confess your sins to one to another. And, as a faith-based person, I'd like to change that because sin is a God judgment term.
Yeah.
And what I bring out in my therapy session is that we are to confess our humanity. That's what we're doing right now on this show is we're confessing our humanity with each other. And there is such a release that's there. And what I've noticed in men, we tend to isolate, thinking that we're not good enough, or you look at, well, what do you do for work? And so there's that power struggle of those type of things that if we would just take the time and really connect and be vulnerable as men, how much more powerful that, we could be. And so Brock, in the next 12 minutes here, I want to focus on, here you are in this meeting. What was the impact afterwards? Did it last for like a week? I'll just do it for a week, like most of us do. We kind of rationalize in our mind and kind of continue. What made that difference?
Well, so after that in my mind was the start of the realization that there could be something more.
Yeah.
That there could be a way to let all this weight go. Like that was the start. Because for a brief second, it went away. But I think where most men get discouraged is they think when they hit that moment, it goes away. It's going to stay on. Well, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. It takes a lot of work. And so for me, that moment started it for me. And I'll be honest, I waffled back and forth for a few years. I changed my routine. I had changed the way I started to see things, changed the music I listened to, the shows I'd watched. I just felt like there was some kind of connection between all of it. And so I felt like I just tried to change everything that kind of fed into me.
Sure.
but I still didn't really have a connection, I guess. Felt like I was trying for one, but I didn't have one. And then about 2 years ago last month, my sister-in-law died of a blood clot to the heart at age 34.
Wow.
And I had been empty of any emotion for way too many years. My whole childhood was just filled with loss. And about, I guess it would have been 11 years ago, we had a little boy in our church that his parents were in our class, and we were teaching the 1 year olds, and this kid didn't like anybody, but he just latched on to me. And immediately, like he wouldn't even go to his parents. He just latched on to me, and there was this insane connection, like just God was connecting us. And he got sick, and he died.
Mm.
And and I got to give the eulogy at his funeral, but he died, and I just quit. I was just done feeling.
Sure.
And I didn't realize I was done feeling, but I was done. And so, like, looking back there, I just I hadn't felt anything in years. And my sister-in-law died, and she'd been in our family since she was like 16. She was 34. Loved her more than my brother, if I'm being honest. and and she died, and it just rocked my world. And honestly, it made me realize, like, I could be gone tomorrow. And
Right.
is this the way my family's going to remember me? You know, no connection, this book full of sins. Like, is this the way they're going to remember me? And I didn't want it to be that way. And so I just went on a desperate search, just a desperate search to try to find something different, to try to get rid of that crushing feeling on my chest. I didn't want to feel it anymore. and and it never came until I committed to real relationships and real openness. And honestly, the biggest deal for me is I had an acquaintance. Um, we couldn't be two separate people. We didn't know each other growing up. We just met several years ago. I did some work for him, and somehow God was pulling us together. We're two completely different people. From rural Oklahoma, and he's from North Tulsa. We just didn't grow up the same, and you think we have nothing in common. And we were friends for a few years, and then I felt like God was calling me to connect with him. And I reached out thinking, this is stupid. Like, I can't be hearing what I'm hearing. And then it happened to be in the middle of he'd done something pretty bad, and his wife had found out about it the day before.
Mm.
And he didn't know what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. And and I didn't know why God for a month straight had been telling me to get in contact with him. I didn't know why he'd been on my mind. And that relationship has grown so immensely to it's far exceeded any relationship I've ever had with another human being. I know everything about him. He knows everything about me. And that in a sense made me feel like we're not in this alone. We
Right.
don't have to be in this alone. That made me feel like, and he was another one of those guys that I looked at him and I'm like, man, this dude's got it all together. I mean, he's got businesses left and right. He's got a great life. And like, I think probably like some people might look at me and it was like, I would have never expected it. But again, like he said it out loud, and I looked at him and I said, first of all, that was a really crappy thing to do. I said, but second of all, like, I love you even more. Like, I liked you before, but I love you now. You know what I mean? Like, you just told me something, like, and I love you. And it was like he kind of took us both off guard because neither one of us thought that's what a man was, you know? And
So
so,
we got about 5 minutes left, Brock.
yeah.
And, I think it's amazing how this just turns around. What would you say to men that are trapped in or similar situations like you? What would you say that you can help them, to encourage them? What can you say in the last 5 minutes to men?
You don't have to be perfect. Um, this idea of perfection is the one thing that kills peace.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one thing that kills joy in your life. Like it absolutely kills it because there is no perfection. Like you have this idea in your head of perfection, but it's not attainable. It's just not. And so I think men living with this idea that we have to be perfect and we can't tell anybody, um, you don't realize how heavy that gets. And so if every man could realize that you're not the only one, you're not the only one who's ever cheated on your wife or been addicted to pornography or had a drug addiction or had these terrible thoughts, or if every man could realize that we've all not lived up to what we expected of ourselves, and say it out loud, Steve, say it out loud. Um, that did more for me than anything. When you think about like what happened that made you feel like you were just free of it. Like I said it out loud, honestly, you know, because you hold it in for so long and it gets heavier and heavier and it weighs on you more. It makes you sicker and sicker. And then it causes you to do more stuff that you don't want to do. And
Right.
so saying it out loud, man, finding someone to say it out loud, and you'll be surprised when you say something out loud. You'll be surprised the real connection that you get. The last year and a half, um, the mentality I've had of telling my story and telling the truth, being vulnerable, and dropping all these inclinations that I have to be perfect. Like the amount of men that I've been able to connect with and have real relationships with, people I've known for 15 or 20 years, that it was nothing but surface level. We knew nothing about each other. We just pass each other in church every week and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Good to see you." Knew nothing about each other. Now there's real connections. And real connection is what God intended for us all. I mean, honestly. Um, so
So
go
when you
ahead.
say real connections, I put your email address. We got your permission for men to contact you, and we got about 2 minutes left. What is it that you're wanting to accomplish? Because I think it's really powerful in what you're wanting to do as a ministry for men. What is it that you're wanting to accomplish now?
Well, so right now, one of the big things that kind of changed my perspective is John Eldridge's Wild at Heart series. And
Yes.
so right now, my main focus is to try to get groups of men together, connect with each other, be vulnerable with each other, and honestly learn that it's okay. It's okay to feel weak. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to tell somebody else. Just to be able to connect with another man. Just in a sense that we're not going through this alone. And
Right.
so my next step for me is we start in a week, our first men's group. We're doing the Wild at Heart series. It's some of the most incredible material I've ever seen on getting to the bottom of why men are the way they are, and how we can become the man that we're supposed to be and find real connectedness with other people, and not just men, but with our children, our wives, our family. And so I think for me, the most important thing for me is it has started with other men, being able to find that connection with other men to say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what I've done. And that's allowed me to push further into the other aspects of my life to say I'm going to push myself for actual connectedness in other areas of my life. So that's my next step. Honestly, we're just trying to do those classes and um, really just show men that there's a different way.
I appreciate, this time of vulnerability, Brock, of sharing where you've been. how you overcame, where you're at. The future for you is now becoming more of a ministry to help men to find that connection. I know we didn't bring it out much, but since this turnaround, your marriage. I'm sure people want to know how is the marriage now, and we got about a minute.
Oh, it's a work in progress, Steve. It is. I think for every marriage, both people typically always come in with baggage, and
Right.
it's very difficult. It's not normal for most of us to know that there is the baggage, and I think the unpacking of that baggage it takes time, but it's getting there. Honestly, both of us are fighting like crazy to relearn each other. And that's the biggest deal is, in any average marriage, if you're married long enough, you're going to be 3, 4, 5 different people. And so it's getting to know each other all over again. But it's putting in that work, honestly. So
Brock, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And we want to encourage men that it's not a hopeless cause. You're not a hopeless cause.
Yeah.
That it's finding connection. Brock wants to be able to connect with you. There's a series at his church. Just emailed him to find out some more information about what he was wanting to do. I could even see hopefully maybe a Zoom type meetings if it gets bigger, whatever it might be, that this is growing. So, for women, it's about being patient with your man. Yeah. It's reaching that understanding that it's not necessarily you're not attractive. It's not that you're doing anything. Typically, it's just us struggling on the inside and trying to figure out that we don't want to appear weak to you or burden you down with what we've got. We know it's a connection. We're trying to find that way. Be patient with us. And so the men, find that connectivity. Until next time, take care and God bless. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Coach Soul, where we aim to empower and uplift you on your journey toward personal growth and well-being to become a better you. Remember, as you navigate through life, you don't have to do it alone. We encourage you to reach out to professionals, seek support from loved ones, and prioritize your own well-being. Stay tuned for future episodes with Steve Hudgins, filled with valuable insights and actionable tips. You have the power to thrive, and with Coach Soul by your side, anything is possible. Until next time, take care, stay empowered, and keep shining your brightest light. For more information, contact Coach at coachedsoul.com.